I'd like to call to order the Beaufort County Stormwater Management Utility Board this Wednesday, October 16th, 2024. First order of business is the approval of today's agenda, and everyone should have a paper copy in front of them. Any additions or corrections to that? Can I get a voice approval for the approval of the agenda? Second. The agenda is approved. We have the minutes. You'd have to go back and look at them. We don't have them in front of us, unfortunately. I do not believe there are any addition or corrections. Can I get a motion to approve them?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
All those,
We'll go down together.
So I can't do that.
the minutes from the meeting of August 21st, 2024 are approved. Next on the agenda is introductions. If we would start in the right side of the room, please.
Jacob Terry, John Hill, Head Stormwater.
Janet Regner, Resort Holding Corporation. Courtney Kimmel, Port Royal Sound Foundation.
Stephen Carter, Beaufort County Stormwater.
Bradley Harriet, County Public Works.
Tammy Jones, Beaufort County Public Works Business Manager.
Taylor Brewer, Stormwater Program Manager, Beaufort County.
Alec Bishop, Broadcast Services, Beaufort County.
Ron Buchanan, St. Helens Islands East.
Ed Warner, Hilton Head.
Dennis Ross at large.
James Clark, represent unincorporated Port Royal.
Bill Bauer, Town of Bluffton.
Nathan Farrow, City of Beaufort.
And I'm Mark Feinberg, Chairman, and I represent Tufusky Island and District 9. At this time, we would ask for any public comments. Please come forward. There being none at this time, we will move on to our special guest. Our special guest is Courtney Kimmel from the Port Royal Sound Foundation. Welcome. We want to thank you for being here and taking your time to be here.
Absolutely. Is this on? Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share what we're doing at the Port Royal Sound Foundation. My name is Courtney Kimmel. I am the Research and Conservation Coordinator. I started about a year ago. And most of you are probably familiar with the Port Royal Sound Foundation. Our mission is conserving the sound for the environmental, economic, and cultural well-being of the area. So it's all the things. And for the last 10 years, the first 10 years of the organization, we've been primarily focused on the education component, really understanding and getting awareness about what is the Port Royal Sound and what makes it so special and so unique. And in this next sort of chapter of the organization, we're really leaning more into the research and conservation work to understand what is happening in the Port Royal Sound, what do we need to know, what do we know, and what are the pressures that we need to be watching to be able to make sure that we conserve. We're not in, restoration mode. I grew up in the Chesapeake Bay. I started working in the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. It was a very different situation, right? A very different place, a very different job of restoring versus conserving and protecting.
Are they in St. Michael's?
Near St. Michael's, yes. I've sailed out of St. Michael's quite a bit. So you guys are probably familiar with the Port Royal Sound Foundation. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary actually this month. So you probably recognize, if you were around long enough, on the left-hand side, that was the facility then. And today we have a bustling museum, thousands of young people coming through, all kinds of programs. And like I said, the pillars of the organization have always been education, research, and conservation, but the primary focus has been on education, and now looking at what does research and conservation mean. So that's what I was hired to do, and I don't probably need to tell this group why it's important. This is one of the fastest growing regions and one of the fastest growing states, and there's a lot at stake. And I think our partners at TNC said it best, that they encouraged us to be brave in this work, because the fate of this estuary was going to be determined in the next 10 years, which to me was pretty startling, but a good reminder of why this work matters. So what we've been doing, or what I've been doing for the last year, is really wrapping my head around what do we mean by the Port Royal Sound? Who's in, who's out? What are we talking about? And so we've done a lot of spatial analysis. We figured out there's multiple ways to define the watershed. So we figured out who's doing the most work, DNR. So we use DNR's delineation of the watershed. As you can see on that map, it encompasses 4 different counties. The majority of it is in Beaufort County. Jasper County makes up about 30% of the watershed. Hampton County, Allendale makes up a little bit, and then we have about 11% of that watershed is open water. It's about 1,500 square miles and 100,000 acres of salt marsh, which accounts for about a third of the salt marsh in the state, which is pretty incredible.
I have a question.
yes.
The other 2/3, I guess Charleston would be 1/3 or a
The,
piece of that?
the salt marsh?
Yes.
It's spread all throughout. So I'm not sure exactly where the concentrations are, but probably Charleston has a concentration. But the other 2/3 are throughout the state. I think it's 310 acres.
And you've got 100.
And we have 100, yes. So we've got a lot to be proud of and a lot to conserve. So when I began this job or this adventure, I asked, well, what do we need to know? Like, what are the things that we need to be watching if we want to conserve the sound? And not pretending to be the expert, I invited about 45 experts, including Taylor, to the Port Royal Sound Foundation in March 24 for the research symposium. And I locked the doors and I said, so now I've got you here, I need you to help me. So I said, what do we need to know and what do we need to know if we want to conserve the sound? Can you all, throughout the day, we had about, like I said, 40 participants from about 15 different organizations, agencies, DOD, DNR, everybody. I broke everybody into groups and said, please bring me suggestions of indicators of what we need to be watching and where we can get that data. I asked for about 12, we got about 22, but a lot of really great discussion came out of it. And so now my task has been figuring out how do we bring those indicators to something that's meaningful. Like, where are we getting the data? What are we looking for? What's normal? How are we going to monitor this? How are we going to sustain this? The buckets of indicators that came out of that conversation are listed there. It's about 6 categories, and then there are indicators within that. And so the first question was like, well, where do we start? So we started with, well, first of all, what's the scale that we need to be looking at? Most of you are probably familiar with HUCs, hydrologic unit codes. The USGS organizes watersheds into hydrologic units. And those are giant units, giant watersheds that then get broken into smaller and smaller pieces, and they add digits onto those codes. So what we decided to look at is the smallest scale, the HUC 12 scale, so we could get as granular of a look at what's happening in the sound as possible. So in that map, you can see, for example, Huspa Creek. Within that big blue watershed is the Port Royal Sound. All of those smaller little turquoise lines are HUC 12s. Huspa Creek is one of those, and if you see it, there's 12 digits there. There are about 37 HUC 12s in the entire watershed. So we're trying to look at all the data that's out there and then organize it so we can say, what's happening in Battery Creek? What's happening in Huspa Creek? Like, instead of just talking about it in general, what's happening specifically? So the first thing we decided to start with was water quality. You can't look at anything else without having water quality as our base, as our contextualizing sort of data. So if we wanted to look at fisheries and something was changing, we would need to know what's happening with water quality first, right? So we found this incredible group called Merrick Labs that we've been working with, and with support from the Community Foundation for the Low Country, we dug in. So we talked to what was DHEC and is now DES. We got as much data as we could find from them within that watershed, which reached back about 20 years, and was ultimately about 47,000 data points on all of these different parameters that we would want to evaluate. And our friends at Merrick Lab have done this incredible assessment on all the different parameters. What's here is just salinity, and I can show you more if you want. If you're ever interested, email me. But essentially what we did is look at salinity on the entire watershed scale, or where there was data, just to figure out what's normal. The idea isn't to figure out what's good, what's bad, right? There's no assessment or there's no evaluation of the data to say, this is good or this is bad. It's just we're trying to figure out what's normal. We took all of this data and then broke it down by individual HUC. So that's, again, that Huspa Creek. So that's just narrowing it down. And then further narrowed it down by season. Because, again, if we wanted to figure out what's normal, we would need to figure out what's happening here and then what's happening here in the fall versus in the spring. So this is where we are with looking at water quality data. And we've then done I shouldn't say because I have had no part in the actual data analysis, because this is magic to me, but we did a time series analysis of all of these data, all these parameters, to see what's happening, right? What's been happening over time. And each data point is slightly different, or each parameter is slightly different in terms of how much data was available. But so for this is salinity, for example, you can see what was happening in the Chichessie, what was happening in Battery Creek, and that's based only on shellfish data because there wasn't ambient data. Something happened on September 21st, 2021 in every parameter. So if anybody has any knowledge about what happened on September 21st, 2021, please call me, because we're trying to figure this out. It wasn't a storm. We looked at weather data. We can't figure out what this was. And it's not a zero data. It's not like there was a line skipped, because there's data there. It's just something very strange happened on that day. And we have huge drops in salinity and huge spikes in E. coli. It's fascinating. So anyway, we're trying to get to the bottom of it. But that's the point, right? Looking at all this data to understand what are trends, what happens, what are we seeing. Water quality data is important, but it's contextualized by water or by land use. So we brought in some land use data. We're going to be bringing in more. But one of the things that we've done is looked at effective impervious surface area, which is to say not all land is developable. So if we subtract marsh out of land and we have whatever the difference is left, that becomes effective, right? Effective land that can be impervious. And we looked at that as a scale. And again, this is not good or bad, right? It just is. And so one of the questions that we're wrestling with is, do we want to use a green-red scale, right? Because red would suggest it's bad. But if things are already red, do we want to spread out red, or do we make them redder, right? Like, where would we want to take this data? So this is an important piece, right? Again, one thing to note is we're not looking to make this regulatory level data. We're not looking to use this data to suggest, impairment or listing or any sort of regulatory. It's just really for decision purposes. I am coming at you like a fire hose. Do you have any questions? I know we've got a limited amount of time.
No, you can take as much time as you want. Where's I'll ask that question later. The number 30 seems to be like a baseline of salinity. What is that? Going back, I see 30, it jumps between 20 and 25 and 30, except for September 21st.
Yeah, except for that.
What is that? Is that a salinity number on the
So
left?
salinity tends to be around in the 30s in the lower
Okay.
watershed.
Gotcha.
But you can see it's actually, there's that trend line
Mhm.
that's trending up. And interestingly, I don't have it here, but the temperature trend line is also trending up. Again, not good or bad, it is. That's what we're seeing in the data.
Okay.
So these are all things that we need to dig into, right? Like what is happening, again, what is normal, not what's good and bad. So again, this land use data, starting to understand what's the relationship between land use, imperviousness, water quality, all of these different, again, indicators that interact, right? Like how do we make good decisions for the watershed based on this data? And this is coming soon. It's dashed because don't read that data in too much detail. The intent, like the ultimate goal is to bring all of this data into a dashboard that is available. Everybody can look at and say what's happening in Battery Creek, what's happening in Huspa Creek. And bringing this in so we can look at the data, we can make it available, we can interpret it, we can figure out what's going on, what are the things that we would like to do, and being able to start building in more of the indicators into this dashboard. So what does salt marsh look like? What do fisheries data look like? What does other habitat types look like? What does resilience look like? Starting to build these in as layers. The water quality piece is really important. And again, I think all of that data that we've analyzed is an interesting look at like, oh gosh, what happened on September 21st, 2021? Did we see that then, or are we only seeing it now in hindsight? My guess is everybody saw something, but not in as sort of a holistic look, right? So one of the things that we're really trying to do with all of this work is make it so that we're collecting data more frequently, more regularly, in higher resolution, so that when something changes, we're not looking at it 2 years later and saying, oh gosh, what happened in September 2021, right? It's like, what's happening now? So that we can act more quickly, we can be more responsive to those changes from what we determine is normal.
So
And-
have you gotten to the normal?
No, that data is yesterday. Like we got to that yesterday. So this is happening in real time.
So you're creating the baseline
We're
now.
creating the baseline, yes.
and Then you can start seeing abnormalities later.
Exactly. And part of that is we're building the baseline so that we can start to collect data in a more regular, frequent, higher resolution schedule, I guess, so that we can understand what's happening as we move forward. And a big part of that is, Port Royal Sound Foundation is not going to do that work alone. There are a lot of people in the room who are doing this work, who, within agencies, within organizations are collecting data. It's a lot of times that data is siloed. So one of the things that we're looking to do in the next couple months, wink, wink, nod, nod, is convene all the people that are doing this work to look at all of this data in great detail and say, what happened here? Or what are we seeing here? Is this what you're seeing? Is this sort of consistent across the watershed? Also looking at where are we collecting data? Is there an opportunity to be more strategic about where we're collecting data? There's huge gaps. Looking at the DES data, there are places that had data collected in 2005, maybe 3 samples, and that's it, right, across that entire Huck 12. So how do we start to fill in these gaps? So there's 2 things we're getting ready to do. One is convene some of these people and see what the interest would be in developing more of a monitoring network that does look at the data and help sort of contextualize that data, identify trends, identify anomalies, and think more strategically about data sharing. We also have a proposal into the state, to the Department of Environmental Services, to develop a citizen-supported water quality monitoring program that would meet state standards. So right now, a lot of the citizen science collection protocols, they call it screening data. Only if something's wildly out of whack do they look at it. What they are looking to do is use Port Royal Sound Foundation as a model for what they're calling decision support data. So not regulatory data. Again, we're not looking to use this data to make a case for impairment or any sort of thing like that. Really what we're trying to do is create a consistent database that we can use to make decisions that would be recognized, right? That's credible and that would hold up in some of these decisions. So that thing is that. What are those weird anomalies like September 21st, 2021? And convening all the agencies, organizations, communities, collecting data to understand what we can do better and what we can do together. And then in 2025, one of the things that we would like to do is convene decision makers, people like yourselves, who could see value in this data, to help us look at the data that we've been compiling and analyzing, the dashboard that we're designing to see how could you use it, how could it be helpful for the decision making, and formalizing that water sharing or that water quality network, and launching the citizen science program.
How are you getting your funding? I saw you said Low Country Foundation of Low Country. I assume they're giving you some funds.
Yes.
Are you soliciting funds from other places?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm sure these laboratories aren't doing their analysis for free.
We have very good partners, and so we've been able to leverage a lot of good partnerships. So we have a pretty discounted rate with USCB. The Low Country, the Community Foundation of the Low Country gave us a pretty nice grant to get the research off the ground. So they said, this is really important to the region. We want to see this happen. So there was a couple year funding and that's where my salary comes from and some of that initial analysis work. Now we're figuring out, well, what is it going to take to sustain it and grow it?
For monitoring devices and all the infrastructure that goes with that.
All the things, yes. So there's a lot of private donations that go into it, but we're looking at other more sustainable sources. So with that, I know that was a lot, but I'm really excited about it. I think there's a lot of people who are very excited about it. DES is very excited about it, which I'm always surprised, about what's the potential. And I think they see a potential in more capacity, right, in being able to fill in some of the gaps. Does anybody have any questions or anything that I didn't touch on?
Well, with that one slide that had all those green spots for all that data collection, and those are not all being done on a daily basis. Like you said, one spot, you only had 3 all, the whole period.
Yeah.
Trying to go back on, look at a specific date, what points were sampled on that date.
Yeah.
And narrow it down to what that was. It was a specific location or so, a certain small area.
Yeah.
That something happened, because it's not collectively over everything.
That's a good point, yeah. It would be, yeah, and I will ask that question. They may have already asked that question, but I will certainly do that.
Well, I'm sure somebody probably already has, but
Yeah.
it didn't make it to your slides, so.
Sure. No, that's a really good point. And I should say, oh, go ahead.
Well, we sampled, Town of Bluffton sampled on the 20th, and we could not get samples because of a storm event. So it could have been a 3-day before storm event that finally got to the rivers. I don't know how far back you checked for your weather, but
Yeah.
we had problems with our sampling on the 20th.
On the 20th of 2021?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, Beth's talking to me.
Was it Ida?
I don't know.
Okay. I was Googling around, and the team that we've been working with did a comparison of weather, and they didn't see anything significant, but maybe there was not a named storm that had an impact. The other thing I should say is we have not included stormwater in this data yet. I think because a lot of the stormwater it's kind of worst case scenario, right? Like in some ways, it would be the flush data that would change the baseline. So one of the things we're trying to figure out is how do we bring that in a way that doesn't skew that baseline data, and it makes it really clear that, this is what's happening. There is a buffer, there's an instance where it could get better, worse, whatever it might be. So that's one of the questions that we would like to have with that group, and you all as well, is how best do we bring in stormwater data, so that it doesn't change the baseline, if that makes sense.
Well,
Yes.
my question would be, that there are 4 incorporated towns, and
Mm-hmm.
some of them, I'm not sure if all of them, do independent sampling.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And stormwater, people do a lot of sampling. Are you able to, you said stormwater might be an aberration with a storm, but it evens out over time.
Mm-hmm.
And our data and their data, are they sharing that with you for your baseline, or more information is probably better than none?
Yeah, so Hilton has shared stormwater data, which is great.
Very good.
So, and we looked at it, and it's funny, it's very consistent, but it's different than the DES data. So we didn't mix it all together yet. We're trying to figure out how do we keep that data separated so that we can see the differences between the two. And I'm probably explaining that wrong because I'm not the data person, but it is certainly a conversation that we need to have and figure out.
I was just thinking that subnotes for all that data would probably be beneficial in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
What was going on at the time, storms, activity, super tides,
Mm-hmm.
all these notes that you don't remember 3 years later.
Yeah, yeah, and yes, these data sets are different time ranges. So I think the next sort of iteration is in that, we can get more data brought in. It's harder with these graphs, which are just sort of a time series analysis. But I think here we'll be able to bring in more contextualizing data that brings it all to life.
Was there a question?
So now, with Beaufort down Water Sewer, though, are you all contact, are they part of this, or y'all, because they sample
Yeah.
all the time. So,
Yeah.
That's good information too.
They were at the symposium, and they inputted into this process, and we've been in communication. It's, again, sort of trying to figure out what do we do with DES ambient data versus stormwater data, which is it's a different nature, I think. So just keeping those two things
Did we?
clear but complementary.
Monitoring devices, is that part
That's what I was thinking through Clemson.
Oh, there was a monitoring real-time device that was put in. Is that part of yours, along with sharing with the county?
Yes, sir, we will share our data for the continuous monitoring station, and when she's talking about the thoughtful placement of stations, we do have another one in the budget for coming up in 2026, and so we're coordinating with Port Royal Sound as well as DNR on the placement of that to make sure that we're included in the grid and that our
Good.
information
Yeah.
gets passed along.
And, looking at some of these data points, like, some of them are random, some of them are ambient, some of them are fixed. So really looking at when we take it out, where are we getting consistent, regular data? Where are there gaps? That's the kind of question that, working with the counties and municipalities and agencies will be helpful in getting those devices in place.
So is it conceptually possible that that low point on September 21st was a date that one sample was taken one place?
It's conceptually possible, yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's just the analysis of the data right now. But it is there. So yes, it could be.
It is abnormal.
It is an anomaly. We are trying to figure that out. Any other questions or thoughts or recommendations? Well, please stop by. Please take my email if you have any thoughts, if you have any sort of follow-up questions. I'm happy to continue the conversation.
Keep up the good work.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next section is reports, although I do not see Dr. Pette here.
He is not. Thank you, Ms. Courtney, for that presentation. Before we start the reports section, I would like to apologize for you not getting your reports ahead of time this month. That is not the new report style. However, your packet is the new report style. So as we go through that today, if you like it, don't like it, let me know. It's under unfinished business, and we'll just continue trying things until we find one that works for us and that works for y'all as well. And we are very appreciative of the chance to redo the report. We recognize that you're trying to make things easier for us, and that's much appreciated because we are very busy. So, getting right into reports. Mr. Ty Petty was not able to make it today. He did call me right before to let me know that they have hired a new lab person full-time that will be starting very soon. And also that
Is
he
that
will
in
be-
management or not?
Yes, they're a lab manager, full-time lab manager, which is the position that I think that they've been needing the most. So hopefully things at the lab will settle down and he will be back at our next appointed time. So for our municipal reports, I see there are several partners here and I would like to open up the floor for anyone that would like to give updates. Jacob?
The only thing of note for Hilton Head is Jeff Netzinger, who is the stormwater manager, did accept the position for town engineer of Hilton Head. So we do not have a stormwater manager at this time, but Jeff will be doing dual roles, and we will hopefully have that filled relatively soon. That's the only thing I have a note.
Mr. Bell?
Town of Bluffton, this weekend is the Arts and Seafood Festival that's held downtown Bluffton. We're partnering with Sea Grant to have our last flood reporting session. So any citizens in the town of Bluffton or surrounding area that had flooding over the last couple storm events or even in the past can come by the town of Bluffton tent and fill out a form that will help us map flooding within the town's jurisdiction. So please come out and do that for us. Our comp drainage study is continuing with Crooked Cove and Girard. We are done with the initial ground finding of all the infrastructure, and we're moving into modeling. So hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have that model done so we can start the asset owner reports for everybody so they can see what's going on in that area. The Town of Bluffton Soloco Design Manual update went to Town Council workshop last week, They unanimously supported moving forward with the rewrite, and should be moving for resolution in January to be adopted 1st of February. And that's pretty much our big happenings right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Mr. Nate, would you like to give an update?
So currently, right now, Public Works has two projects that are in design and permitting, one in Battery Shores for a sediment pond and outfall repair and rebuild, and one in Broad Street, which is a pond redesign. And then I would like to remind everyone that the city of Beaufort has a quarterly capital improvement project meeting that goes in front of council. It's a work session that goes over all of our projects and goes a little more in depth for the city of Beaufort projects, to include the drainage projects in King and East and in the core district as well.
Thank you for that.
Is that held on a certain day of the month, or is that floating?
So I would have to go back and look, but it should go, I believe, I think it's held as a separate work session besides the normal monthly work session and council meeting. It should be posted on cityofbeaufort.org.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nate. I don't believe we have anyone from Town of Port Royal here, so we will skip that municipal report. At this time, I'm going to invite Mr. Stephen Carter to come up and give us our maintenance report.
Afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Mr. Carter.
I'll talk to y'all a little bit about the maintenance reports, and after that, give y'all an update on a few of the projects that we have ongoing now. For stormwater maintenance projects that have been completed, we have work that's been done in the Alljoy area. This project improved 18,452 linear feet of drainage system. The scope of work included cleaning out 5,308 linear feet of roadside ditch, 500 linear feet of channel, and 12,588 linear feet of valley drains. Also installing 2 catch basins, 56 linear feet of roadside pipe, and riprap for erosion control. Total cost of that was $83,331. I won't go through all of them, but if you look in your packet, y'all can see another one of the major projects. One of the minor and routine projects we have for the town of Hilton Head, it was a reimbursement. The scope of work included hydro seed in various areas for erosion control, and the total cost of that was $11,354. As far as the ongoing projects we have upcoming or going on for stormwater, we have the Bay Pines area in Hilton Head, and that scope of work, we're cleaning out the roadside ditches and installing the driveway pipes, because the pipes that are down now are out of sequence, so which is causing water to be held up. So after we clean those roadside ditches and install those driveway pipes that need to be replaced, that should cause positive water flow. We also we're still waiting for quotes for the channel ditch, because there's a lot of trees that need to be removed so we can establish our work shelf and clean that channel. The other project we have ongoing is in Baywood subdivision. It's in the town of Bluffton, and we're cleaning out the roadside ditches down there as well on both sides, and we have to install a driveway pipe. Another area in Bluffton is the Windy Lake Sugary area. As far as that, we're still waiting for a couple of tree company quotes, because, due to procurement and all the finance, we have to get the 3 quotes. So we're waiting on that. Once those are processed and we get our tree company out there, they'll take down some trees for us, and we can go ahead and get started with the work out there.
Thank you. Any questions?
I know we didn't get see any problematic emails from some of the problematic neighborhoods, like Alljoy and some of the others. Did you guys see anything, particularly during Helene, where there was issues that, you guys had worked on these areas? Were they still large problems, or have they been reduced at least?
Well, to my knowledge, some of the problems have been reduced, but before the storm, I had the crews in prep and ready to go in the event there was a major problem down there. We had all our mud pumps ready and equipment and crews ready to head out if anything was called
Excellent.
in the event of an emergency.
That's great.
Hopefully, the citizens of All Joy are thankful for your response.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. And as a part of your new report, that is on the last page, the shortened maintenance report, but you will be getting an email after the meeting today that will include the long versions of everything if you would like more information. And just for future reference, that will come a week ahead in the future.
Thank you.
Okay. Liaison report, I don't see Miss Alice Howard here
No,
today.
unfortunately, we do not have a liaison report.
Not today. Next time, I'm sure she'll be here. She's very faithful. Moving on to our utility update. Just a reminder, financial report from the municipalities are due. It says not received from Bluffton, but I need to check on that. Possibly could have been sent to Katie. If it was, I don't have access to her email, so there may be some resending of things. If you've sent it before, my apologies, please send it again. The stormwater utility fee restructure. So we have new procurement policies that are effective, I believe, now. Yes, they are effective now. We got a couple weeks warning of the new procurement policies. It has made it difficult to get POs and things issued. So as of yesterday, Wolpert did not have a PO issued for the stormwater utility fee restructure. That was where they were going to go through and give us suggestions of how we can restructure our fee calculation to make it more simple, also more equitable, and more definable when we get questions from the public. So that is still something that we intend to go through with. It will not be ready for implementation in tax year 25 as we were hoping. So we will still get our options, and we will just have extra time to analyze them and decide what we would like to pick. For the Soloco design manual, Mr. Bill touched on it. Bluffton opened it up for 2 public comment periods. We received a lot of fantastic feedback from the developer and engineer community. Ms. Andrea Moreno did a great job of putting that feedback together in a draft of the new Soloco manual, including edits. I will make sure that y'all all have a copy of that, and I would specifically like your input back before we put that forward to our council for changes. So that will be included as an extra in your email after today. It's very lengthy, but I will also include the list of changes, so you will know what has changed from the old Soloco manual to the new. It's very technical things like peak rate factors and mostly just format edits. So that will be coming down the pipeline for y'all. CWI reports were sent out in September, 17 days late to be exact. I apologize for that. If you have any questions, please contact me, or if anybody has any today. Okay. Moving right along, for our projects report, there were several sections in the old report that kind of touched on projects, and I felt like it was just very kind of disjointed and it didn't make cohesive sense. So I put all of our projects under one list. So starting with All Joy, the drainage study went out to bid on August 2nd. We received 9 proposals from local engineering firms. A selection committee has been established, and they are currently scoring proposals. Also, if you remember, this is a grant-funded project, so we held a kickoff meeting with RIA staff, and we've been issued a notice to proceed, which basically means that we are allowed to spend the money now that we were awarded. So once we have selected a firm, I will make sure that you are notified so you can know how we're moving forward. Once a firm is selected, we plan on getting that information out to the All Joy community. I will be their new point of contact for all things stormwater, but the county is going to assign a point of contact for all Beaufort County All Joy projects to include the landing, the pathway, the parking lot expansion, as well as anything stormwater. So I will let y'all know as well who that point of contact is, and that will be the county representative that will push out all things related to Alljoy to the residents. So that's how that will be handled.
Have you issued a permit on the bike path sidewalk?
No, sir, I don't
Project.
think a development permit has been issued. There are plans, construction-ready plans. So moving on to number 2 on your projects list, there was in the works an Ocoee River study it was gonna be a joint effort between Town of Bluffton and the county. That is no longer happening at this moment. The initiative was not passed by Bluffton Council, so we're tabling it and kind of reassessing. I think their issue was they have a very small percentage of the watershed in their jurisdiction. The county has a very large percentage of the jurisdiction, and we were paying half equal. So I think they kind of wanted to reassess the stakeholders and who was paying for what in the new Ocoee River study. So it's not gone forever, but it's been tabled with some cost-sharing issues to figure out.
And Jasper County.
And Jasper.
We all have a little bit of fingerprints in it.
Yes. So Bay Pines, Stephen touched on that. So we were contacted by Hilton Head staff. There was lots of flooding, especially after Tropical Storm Debbie, and they came up with a nice report of where all the trouble areas were for us, the county assets. So we sat down and met with them. We are requesting that Wolpert come up with a design for upgrades, construction-ready plans. There's specifically an outfall that's a very large pipe that runs under a private road, and it has to be submerged so far to have the coverage to run the road over it, but it is submerged so far that it is no longer an outfall. The marsh has taken it over, so there is no water going out, which traps the water in, so it's affecting our residents. So we have all been out there and walked around and looked on the ground and assessed what we think are the problem areas. We've passed that along to Wolpert, and they will give us a design, and then we will work with the private entities and DOT to institute those upgrades.
Is that similar to like what they did in Mossy Creek? Is that what they're looking at? Because the outflow issues they had there, they had to go in and rebuild and redesign that. So are they looking at something very similar to that?
I'm not familiar with Mossy Creek.
Okay.
This road, where, is it a state road?
It is a private road, I believe.
One's a state and one's private.
One's a state and one's a private.
Roads is- Basically, the county property drains through that
Outfall.
outfall.
Okay.
But it runs under DOT and privately owned assets. Our plan is to have construction-ready plans and go to them and say, hey, this is a problem. Will you fix it? The answer is usually no. How, and then we talk about who is gonna fund it and how it's gonna get fixed. Good thing is, we have a very good contact with DOT, even though Miss Elizabeth has retired, so that's good. Moving on to Shell Point. So our contractor, Jay Bragg, has identified 11 maintenance shelves within existing county easements that need to be cleared and reestablished. We only received one bid. It was from Optera, and we have been instructed by procurement and upper management to rebid this because we only did get one bid, and it's over $900,000. So they wanted.
Is there a threshold?
No, but because it's so large, I think it is over the threshold for needing 3 bids.
It's-
Yes, sir, and we only received one, so we are putting it back out to bid to make sure that we are being fair and equitable. For Rivers End, this has been something that's been on the table. We actually are in the process of we had a drainage study done, and we just didn't have construction-ready plans. We knew there was an issue, but it's happening faster than we thought it was going to, and now there are 8-foot sinkholes that have developed in people's front yard due to a double layering of pipes. So there was an old system there, and then people wanted more yard, so the county came in and piped in the dishes, and now the systems are collapsing on top of each other.
Is
So
it failed piping?
Yes, sir.
Substandard piping?
And design. I don't think there was much forethought
It's-
to the design on the second end. We were just being responsive.
Not unusual.
So we are gonna take the pipes back out and convert it back to open channel via bioswales, and, which will also give us bacteria removal, credit for, it's on a TMDL, the outfall, so we will get, TMDL credit for this project as well. We're gonna revamp the stormwater pond at the end, put a pathway around it to make it a community amenity, put some good stormwater signage up, saying why and what we did, explaining what the bioswales are. So hopefully the output will be an amenity for the community and a better functioning water filtration system for stormwater. Tuxedo Park, this one has been out to bid twice, yet we only received one bid again. We were thrilled about it because the first bid came in a lot lower than the first two. So we thought, yay, and we were gonna just accept it, and procurement said that's not acceptable. So we're trying to work out the details with them to see if the first two times it went out to bid can count as price comparison, considering that it was years ago and the price we got now is still lower. So as you can tell, there's a theme throughout these projects. It's called procurement, and we're figuring it out. Hickory Hill, this one's been trying to go to PFC for a while, but we do perceive it going to November PFC meeting. Royal Pines is another one that became very evident to us after Tropical Storm Debbie. There's two issues mainly, one Turtle Lane and 4 Needle Rush. We're working on trying to figure out a solution there. Once again, DOT assets combined with county assets, and we're not sure exactly where the problem is. So we're doing some cammering of some lines, doing some figuring of where the system is going. It's fun when you have an older system that doesn't necessarily have as-built, so you have pipes that you don't know where they go. So we're working on it. We are aware of the issues, and we will continue to work on it until we can figure it out.
I had a crew out there to back up. The catch basins on Needle Rush are full of debris and pine stuff. We got to pull the lids off and, had the back truck go back down there. They were down there today. So that's one of the cause of the hold up of the water on Needle Rush.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen.
That's what I was looking at in talking about fleshing out the individual projects, that kind of information, as opposed to just problem areas.
Right.
What kind of problems are we talking about?
All of our problems are usually flooding. 99% of our problems are flooding with stormwater. So they were experiencing some leftover water after Tropical Storm Debbie that wasn't draining. We didn't have
the
any.
sinkholes are a real anomaly for us.
So, yes, it is. But we had some severe complaints. There were no structural integrity losses, so no one had water in their house. It came close, but no one had water in their house. So we were just, at this point, trying to prevent that from happening again. Moving down, Arthur Horn is still coming down the pipeline. It's a natural wetland that we use for stormwater purposes. And it got pretty beat up and damaged in Hurricane Matthew. So we're gonna do kind of the same thing that we wanna do at River's End, in the sense of having a pathway put around the pond. If we have to redo the pond anyways, we would like to give the community something back as well. It also offers permanent stormwater outreach education for anyone that walks around the pond. We'll have signage letting them know what's happening, why the pond is there, and kind of how it helps with water quality. So the last update I received from the USDA is that they were writing the scope of work for review and approval to obtain a federal contractor to begin design work. So I will keep you updated on that. Hopefully it's gonna start ramping up here soon. I know we've been saying that for a couple months, but federal funding is interesting.
Can you refresh me why USDA is involved?
Because they have a grant through NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service. So moving to our professional contracts update, we have one current on-call company for A&E Stormwater Services, and that's Beaufort. With these new procurement challenges, we've started looking at what other people are doing, and our engineering department, for example, has multiple on-calls for A&E, and we were just wondering maybe we should move that way, obviously with strict directions from our procurement. At one point, we were told to use our on-call for everything, and then they said, don't do that because it's showing bias. So we were wondering if we had more vetted companies for our on-call, if that would help move things along with procurement. So we are investigating that as well. The task order-based contract for Beaufort expires on October 8th, 2025. We've established that, renewed that for 2 years now, so we will have to put it out to bid in 2025. So that's just upcoming. We've always had Beaufort, and they've been great for us. We're not dissatisfied. It's just what we have to do to maintain our equitableness. To my favorite announcing part, we're going to move on to our staff update. So as you know, Ms. Katie Herrera, Assistant Public Works Director of Environmental, left in August. We are not currently backfilling her position. We're just trucking right along. Things seem to be doing well, so the less change, the better, I think is the mantra.
So the county has decided not to fill that position?
Yes, sir, at this time. Not me personally. I don't have that kind of power.
Nor does Stormwater.
So also, that you may or may not know, Ms. Daphne Butler, she was our Senior Administrative Assistant for Environmental. She has moved on to bigger and better things for herself personally in risk management. It was not a bad separation. She just wanted to move on. So that has left us without an admin person as well, which is, I'm not going to make excuses, but one of the reasons that you didn't receive your board report this month on time. But good news is that we had 24 applications for this position. Blew me away, the most applications I've ever seen for a position. We conducted 10 interviews, which was a lot, but we found Miss Sally McLeod. She is fantastic, and she will be starting on October 28th. So it should be business as usual after October 28th. Also, here with us today in our midst, we have a star. Mr. Bradley Harriet was announced as our new Public Works Director.
Round of applause.
Take a bow.
We were all equally as pleased. So with that, moving on to number 6 on our agenda is unfinished business. As y'all graciously have instructed us for the board report overhaul, this is your newer packet form. I would like all comments, suggestions, constructive criticisms on your packet. I will be sending a follow-up email that will have the lengthy attachments for everything, including the full maintenance report, Bluffton's report, Dr. Ty Petty's report, and everything listed out. So if you care to go through that on your own, that would be fabulous. With that, go ahead.
At this time, I would like to thank Mr. Ed Warner and Mr. Dennis Ross for spearheading that subcommittee with your help, Taylor, to hopefully eliminate excess paperwork that ends up maybe not being recycled as it should be. And since I am now on the Solid Waste and Recycling Board, we want to make sure that we recycle properly, and there's a lot of colored ink that went into those pages. Hopefully it will streamline the administrative work and give us an opportunity to formulate questions, and I commend you because that's what we want to see on the projects. We'd rather have more information on projects. We always like to hear Mr. Carter talk about how many linear feet that he's dredged throughout the county in 2 months, but his time can be better served managing his work crews. So I think it's a win-win for everyone.
Yes, sir, I agree. Thank you. With that, open it up to the board for any new business. Thank you.
There being no new business that I know of, we do have some people that came in after the meeting started, so I will open up the floor for public comment. If anybody has any public comment, please come up and identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Kathy Coburn. I live in the Alljoy area on Croker Street. We are real nervous about the path, not having impervious surfaces, and I just want that to be known. But what I really came here for was to say thank you so very much for all the cleanup work that was done before this last storm. We had areas that had problems, but it was not near like in the past, and we are very appreciative of the cleanup.
Well, the thanks goes to those out in the field. Who
That's why I
did-
like
and-
it.
And they've done a great job.
Yeah, they have. And, I mean, we've got some areas where with DOT and y'all, and there's discrepancies on who takes care of what. But as far as storms, and I've been there for a long time, we did really well with this one compared to in the past. And thank you.
You're very welcome. If my memory serves me right, from the county council's Monday meeting, that over $1 million is set aside for Beaufort Jasper Water to do sewer hookups in Alljoy. So I think we're moving definitely the Alljoy area into the 21st century.
And thank y'all for all the help and for listening to us. I know we've been in here in masses, but we appreciate the help.
It's always nice to be appreciated.
Because it's so infrequent.
Any other public comment at this time? The next meeting agenda, during the last meeting, we talked about having an off-site meeting. And we have decided among the members present that it would be much more conducive to have photographs taken, and we can review them in advance and have any questions, than taking the arduous task of taking this gentleman's time and setting up audio-visual and tents and cold weather and inclement weather in December. So if it's all right with the stormwater manager and staff, we will have our next meeting here.
Yes, sir.
However, it would be great to have Mr. Sullivan from the WayPro give his talk here rather than outside.
Absolutely.
So if we can make that happen, it'd be much appreciated. Yes, sir.
So perhaps not just photos, but maybe a video of the valve in operation, if that's possible?
Right.
That'd be good. A good suggestion, Mr. Warner.
Thank you.
Before I conclude, is there any other business from anyone on the dais or in the audience? If not, this meeting is adjourned.